much. It's great to be back at Job Seekers again. I love this organization, and I love Craig and his staff and what they've done for all of you. They're just a huge help and a huge resource. So I'm very thankful for that. So it's great to see everybody. I hope that you will be able to hear me and see me okay. I know that from time to time, the Zoom calls freeze. And if they do, then we're just going to have to work around that. But it's great to see everybody today. Thank you for being here. So I want to get right into our topic today. We are living in unprecedented times. Oh my word, you really know what that means. It's a big deal. And maybe before COVID-19 ever showed up, you were looking for a job and you haven't found it yet. And then COVID-19 shows up. And oh my word, what a big deal it has made. Listening to the news this morning, and there were 1,500 unemployment applications put in, and then it went to like 60,000. And it's unprecedented times. So our kids and our grandkids are going to ask us questions about the pandemic and COVID-19 and what it was all about. And you're going to have a story, and hope that your story ends in a very good way. And I believe that it will. So I'm a professional speaker. This is what I do for a living. I give keynotes and retreats and virtual presentations. I do all of this. And yet, because of COVID-19, I am unemployed. That's right. As a speaker, all of our events around the country have been canceled. No speakers are going to conferences and hotels and convention rooms. None of that's happening because of COVID-19. We're shut down. And so, man, we just have to do something about that. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. As a matter of fact, I had a group of attorneys that were coming in from New York. They were going to fly into Houston and Austin, and then we were going to meet at a ranch. And I was going to do a one-day retreat for them. We're super excited about it. And he said, Scott said, we're looking forward to showing up there. It's going to be a great time. I said, well, there's some travel issues. What are we going to do? Well, I think this is going to pass. It's going to blow over. And so the week before, I called him again and said, okay, well, what's up? Because if you fly in from New York to Austin, you have to quarantine for 14 days before we can start our retreat. And he said, yeah, I know. Yeah, we're just going to have to put it off. We can't do it now. Well, when they say put it off, that also means we're putting off my paycheck. So yes, I think it's safe to say I understand some about where you are right now. I'm also president of the National Speakers Association here in Austin. And we have speakers all over this area that are in that same situation. We are waiting for those doors to creak back open. So when those things happen, we just have to do something about it. And I know that's exactly what you're trying to do. And I hope that I can share with you a few things today that will help you make the very best of this situation and get you back to work exactly like you want to be going. So I want to share a few phrases with you today that I think are very appropriate. I grew up with one of them. You grew up with it too. And it's this one. Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah, have you ever heard that one before? Sure you have. Necessity is the mother of invention. And I can remember my mom saying that when I would run into a problem or a situation, and she would just look and not always smile, but she would say, necessity is the mother of invention. What are you going to do about it, Scott? And so, wow, I would have to kind of reach into the resources of what I knew or understood and become innovative. As a matter of fact, when I looked up where did the necessity is the mother of invention. When I looked that up to see where it came from, you'll never guess. It came from Plato years ago, because this hasn't been a new thing. I mean, for a long time, people have felt, have had obstacles, and resources have run out, and things have changed drastically, and people have had to pivot and maneuver and do things different for a long time. So it's really a test of who we are. It's who we are as humans, it's who we are as Texans, it's who we are as Americans, it's who we are as Christians. We have to dig into the resources that we haven't tapped. You know, it's said that we only use about 6% of our brain. So that means we're going to have to tap into deeper resources. But when I looked up, who's the father, or where did necessity is the mother of invention, where did it come from? Well, Plato is who gave it to us. But it went on, and it said if Plato is, and necessity is the mother of invention, Thomas Edison is the father of innovation. Thomas Edison had over 1,000 experiments, and what's the word that I'm looking for? Anyway, things that he put together, inventions, over 1,000 inventions, and documented. And Thomas Edison was the father of innovation. Now, I like that term too, because innovation means that we're looking for a different way to do things. You know, that's one of the gifts that I have, being my brain is a Change Energizer, and I energize people to be innovative. Innovative means that we're doing things differently. Maybe we're ahead of the curve. And we have companies all around us, especially in Austin, that are being innovative. COVID-19 has shoved a lot of us into innovations that we really hadn't been thinking about or planning on. You're in one of them right now, Zoom, a Zoom webinar or a Zoom conference call. You know, when all of this stuff hit for me, and I couldn't speak anywhere, I couldn't travel, couldn't get on a plane, I couldn't drive to Dallas or Houston or San Antonio or somewhere else and get in front of an audience because more than 10 people couldn't gather. When my association needed to meet and our 45, 50 members needed to gather together, we weren't allowed to do that. And so we had to go to Zoom, doing exactly what you're doing right now. We had to learn that skill, and it was a big learning curve for a bunch of us. But as we're learning it, that innovation, that learning something new is opening doors for us. And the same thing's going to be true of you. I want you to really seriously think about innovation for you, the necessity of invention for you, and making some innovative approaches and mindset to what you do, how you make a living, and how you use your education and your skill set to bring in money. We're challenged on that right now, and you're being challenged on that. And I just have to tell you, it's uncomfortable. I like new things to some degree. I like to be challenged and innovative, but oh my word, sometimes it's like, oh, that's just too much. But sometimes we don't have a choice. And that's why necessity is the mother of invention. You're probably in a place right now where you don't have a lot of choices and you're having to do something different. And I want to encourage you in that. I want you to stay with it. So I want to tell you a story. Back in the early 1900s, cotton was a big crop in the South. And in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, cotton was a big crop. But around 1915, boll weevils began to come into Georgia and Alabama and other places and eat the crops up. And they didn't have the kind of technology that we have today where we can control some of that. And it really began to be a big deal. And because the crops were so large and so good, the boll weevil population just began to flourish. The farmers would plant their crops and wait on the rain and wait on the hot sun, and the cotton would begin to grow, and the boll weevils would show up and they would eat the cotton crop away. Farmers were left in devastation. It really reached a peak in 1915, and the farmers were just trying to figure out, what are we going to do? How are we going to approach this? Because we've always grown cotton. Cotton is what we grow. We are the resource for the country in growing cotton. It's what we do. It's what my fathers did. It's what my kids are going to do. It's who we are. But it was a problem. Boll weevils were eating them up. Well, there was a gentleman by the name of H.M. Sessions, and he was the seed broker in Enterprise, Alabama. And he went up to Virginia, North Carolina, and he looked around and discovered that there was something else that the farmers were growing up there that boll weevils had no interest in. And so he came back to Enterprise, Alabama, and he talked to a gentleman by the name of C.W. Baston, who was a farmer, had a large farm. And he said, C.W., how your crops doing? He said, you know how they're doing. We've lost everything, just not working for cotton. And he said, well, I just got back from North Carolina and Virginia, and they're farming peanuts up there. And I want to sell you some peanut seed. And I want to encourage you to plant your whole farm, your whole crop in peanuts. And he toiled with it, and he thought about it. I'm not a peanut farmer. I don't know anything about peanuts. It just doesn't make sense to me. Cotton's what I know. Cotton's what I know how to grow. I got a cotton stripper, and we got gins around here. We got all the equipment for cotton. We don't have the equipment for peanuts. What are we going to do with peanuts? And so Mr. Sessions said, well, peanuts are growing up in Virginia and North Carolina, and the boll weevils don't mess with peanuts. And so Mr. Sessions sold Mr. Benson peanut seed. And that year he planted his entire farm, his entire crop in peanuts. And at the end of the year, at the end of the harvest, when he harvested that, that was in 1915, he harvested a $5,000 crop, which for him was huge. The other farmers in the area were losing their crops to boll weevils left and right. Over the next year, the other farmers adopted peanuts and said, we're going to grow peanuts too, because they work for him, they'll work for us. And in 1917, just 2 years later, they harvested those peanuts and made $5 million in crops that year. I mean, it was incredible. Let me tell you what, today, if you take a drive or look it up online and you go to Enterprise, Alabama, you'll see a statue in the town square. And the statue is a statue of a boll weevil. It's a great big boll weevil, and it's in the town square. And you can read the writing on the bottom of it, and it tells you the story. Here lies a memorial to the boll weevil, because that boll weevil made us pivot to peanuts. And as a result of it, we became not just able to take care of our family, but wealthy, because we found a crop that worked and the boll weevils didn't get to it. What's your new crop going to be? What is it that you may pivot to and do differently? You know, those people were still farmers, but they farmed a different crop. And it could be that what's going on with you is screaming very loud. There's some areas that you can still stay in, but you need to farm a different crop. Maybe you've always worked for this kind of company with this kind of service, but I want to use other skills that you have over here. You know, right now I've got a good friend. His name is Chris. And Chris is from the Air Force. He's a trained pilot. Our government trained him to fly huge aircraft all over this world. The guy's so skilled. He's so intelligent. I mean, he has that Air Force look to him. I mean, when you meet him, Chris just got that Air Force look, and you just want to salute him and you have respect for him. But he's not in the Air Force anymore. He got out of the Air Force and he found something else that really tapped a skill that he loved. He's a financial advisor. He worked with numbers on a jet and on planes, but now he works with numbers in financial advice. He's very good at it. And somehow or another, he tapped a different skill and went after something else, and it's become very beneficial to him. What could you tap into? You know, I'm thinking about Dominic. When Dominic got out of college, Dominic knew something about logistics. And what I mean by that is he went to work for a trucking company. And this was a company that did shipping from all over the country, maybe even around the world, trucking. And so he is the one who did the logistics, from taking loads from here to over here, picking up another one here. He did those logistics. He worked at that. He was good at it. But at one point, his company was bought out and he was laid off. And when he did, he was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Well, you know, Chris was a pilot. Dominic said, that's what I want to do. And so he went to pilot school and he trained and studied, and now he's flying planes. And so you never can tell what you may turn into. This could be a huge pivot time. Necessity is the mother of invention. Thomas Edison is the father of innovation. What are some things that you could reinvent in your life? Maybe you could use your same skill set, but in a different way. I want to challenge you to do that. I think that's so critical, so important to be open-minded and think about it. So here's what I'd like for you to do right now. Just while you're sitting there, I want you to get out a piece of paper, pen, and I want you to write down, define your talent and what it is that you do. Maybe you're an engineer. Maybe you're a software engineer. Maybe you're a salesperson. Whatever your talent is, I want you to write it down. What's your skill? After you've done that, I want you to make a list of 10 other types of jobs that you could use that talent in a similar way. So whatever it is that you do, I want you to make a list under it of 10 other types of jobs that you could do. Could be that maybe you need to do some research on it. Ask some other people who maybe got an education in one area, but they used it in a different area than they normally have been using it in. You may come up with some very interesting ideas. This is a great brainstorming session. Get together with some of your friends. And personally, I think the brainstorming session is really important. Here's the deal. Your friends, your peers can see things about you that you can't see. And they can say, well, man, if you worked over here and you were a manager over there, you could be a manager over here in this kind of industry. Well, no, I don't know anything about that. Yeah, but you know how to manage people. You know how to get projects moving and you know how to complete things. Oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. And, you know, you're good with numbers. Well, people that are good with numbers can do something over here. And your friends can see things about you that you can't see yourself. So if we were sitting in job seekers right now, I would say, get with 4 or 5 of your friends and help them come up with a list so that they have some other ideas of things that they could try out and they could go for. I think that's really critical. And I think that just like Chris, when he was good at numbers, but he didn't want to be a pilot anymore. Instead, he wanted to do financial advice. So I encourage you to go after that. So make that list. I would say make a list of 10. Don't stop with 1 or 2. Make a list of 10. Get online. Do some research online about your skill set and what kind of jobs use that skill set. So I was standing in line at the Metropolitan Breakfast Club a few years ago, and there was a guy who came up to me and he introduced himself, and well, I said hi. We just started the conversation, and I said, so what's your name? My name's Brian. Okay, Brian. So what kind of work do you do? IT. I do IT. Okay. So what do you mean by IT? Well, IT. I do IT work. Oh, so I don't get it. What kind of IT work do you do? Oh, well, I work at people who take these security cards, and you program a security card, and on certain doors you swipe it, and if you have clearance, then you get to go into that part of the hospital, and you could hit it on other doors, but you don't have clearance to go into those other places. And I said, oh, so you do security IT clearance cards? Yeah, that's exactly what I do. And I said, okay, well, I didn't get it. I didn't understand IT. That's kind of a big, broad term. So you're looking for a job? Yeah, man, I'm looking for a job. Okay, well, when you get up to give your introduction, then say, I do IT security card clearance at places like hospitals, people who need ascending levels of access. I'm the one who builds that program. He said, really? I should say that? Why don't I just say IT? Because everybody knows what IT is. I said, no, just, give them an example. And so he did. He got up and he said, my name is Brian, and I do IT security badge clearance for ascending levels. And so when he finished, at the end of the meeting, there were 3 or 4 people that came up to him and said, hey, I want to visit with you. I don't work at a hospital. I work somewhere else. But we need somebody who can come in at another kind of place. Well, I've only worked at hospitals, but I can do that at other places. And so he was able to land a job as a result of it. So it's just important to make a list of some things that you can do that are not just specifically what you've always done. And I'd like to hear about it. If you think of some of them, put it in the chat box and let us hear about it. I'd like to see a list of 5 to 10 things. Put it in the chat box. Now, I don't want to stop there because I had something else I want to share with you. And that is another phrase. How many of you ever heard this one before? A watched pot never boils. Yeah, a watched pot never boils. So what does that mean? We make a lot of tea in this house. Man, I drink gallons of tea every day. And so we have a kettle, and we fill it up with water. We put it on the stove, we turn it on, and it just starts doing its thing. And of course, it has a whistle on it. And I'm out of tea, and I need to I needed to hurry up because I got stuff to do. And so I'm sitting there watching it. Okay, come on, boil. Come on, you're on high, boil. Come on, boil. Hurry up, I got things to do. Hurry up, oh my God. What are you waiting on? Hurry up, boil. I go over and check the heat. I turn it up. It's up as high as it'll go. And I just wait, and it doesn't boil. I pace around the kitchen. It doesn't boil. And I walk upstairs. Finally, I walk upstairs, get to my office. And as soon as I get to my office, the whistle is blowing and the pot is boiling. That's the way it works. But a watched pot never boils. So what am I trying to say? I know that sometimes when you have filled out resumes and you're trying to book interviews and you've made a bunch of phone calls and you've sent out a bunch of emails and you're just working your stuff and you're working your stuff and you're working your stuff and you're working your stuff. Oh my God. And you're just looking for emails to come back in. You're looking for the phone to ring. You're looking for to get something in the mail. You're watching it all the time, and it's not happening as fast as you want it to happen. And that's just the way it works. Because when you're looking at something and you need it to move, you need things to happen, you get super frustrated because it's not happening. So I want to encourage you to quit watching that pot all the time. When you watch a pot and you are always looking at these emails and these resumes and these phone calls and getting some feedback on these interviews, it raises your anxiety. It creates stress for you and for the people around you. It can make you angry. You know, you start second guessing yourself and your abilities and, you know, well, how did I do? Did I wear the right shirt? Did I look right? Did I say the right things? Oh man, I messed up on that stupid question. Why did I say that? And you just start second guessing yourself. It's a terrible place to be. As a matter of fact, if you're not careful, this is what you'll say. Maybe you've said it. This is not working. This is just not working for me. I don't know what's wrong, but it's not working. I mean, God must be against me. He must hate me. This is not working. You got to stop that. That's why we have that phrase, a watched pot never boils. You need to break away. You need to break away from what you're doing and go focus on something else. And when you focus on something else and get your mind off of that, then things can begin to happen and you feel much better about it yourself. So a few years ago, there was I was up in Connecticut and I did a presentation for a group of business owners up there. And there were probably about 15 of them in the room. One of them was Drew Rankin. And Drew, he ran the Connecticut Municipal Electric Energy Cooperative. That's a mouthful. And so when it was over, Drew came up to me, executive man, you know, tall, robust executive, a very powerful person. And he said, Mr. Carley, I really liked your presentation on time management. My team, my executives need to hear that. Email me. We're going to set up a date for you to come be with our team. Oh my God. Yes. So man, I got his card and I got his information. And so as soon as I flew back to Texas, man, I typed up an nice email. I sent it off to him. I watched that email and I watched that email and I watched that pot and it would never boil. So I called him. Yes, Mr. Rankin there, Drew Rankin, Scott Carley. He asked me to call him. He's out. Oh, okay. Well, let him know I called. Hang up. A couple of days later, I called back. Yeah, Scott Carley calling for Drew Rankin. He asked me to call him. He's not there. He's busy. Okay. He's in a staff meeting. All right. Call back. I probably sent 15 emails over a period of 8 months. Finally, when I called one time, somebody said, well, you should talk to his executive assistant. They can help you out. So I was transferred to the executive assistant and I said, Ellen, nice to meet you. You know, I spoke and Drew heard me speak about 7 or 8 months ago and asked me to get in touch with him and you know, if you could put a bug in his ear. Oh, he's been getting your emails. And he said something about you. And I said, well, he never has responded to any of my emails. Really? Well, let me see what I can do. And 9 months after that initial visit, finally, Drew writes back and says, hey, we want to set it up for you to come up here and speak to our team. And get with Ellen, we'll set some dates and make it happen. I'm going to tell you that was one of the best connections that I ever made. Because not only did I go up there and speak to his executive team for a full day retreat, at the end of it, he had me personally coach 8 of his executives. And then after that, Ellen, who was on the planning committee of a conference, volunteered my name as one of the speakers. And a year later, they brought me in to speak to over 2,000 people at that conference. What would have happened if I had given up? What would happen if I just freaked out because I was watching at that pot all the time? Come on, boil, boil, boil. And I'd gotten mad and frustrated and upset. I would have missed something really big. So here's a recommendation that I want to make to you, and as I begin to wrap things up, and that is find things to get your brain into. Now, it's not the last phrase, but another phrase that I want to share The idle mind is the devil's workshop. And when your mind is idle and you're just focused on work and those resumes and those appointments and those calls, it can really freak you out. So here's my recommendation to you as a time management coach and as somebody who does this all the time. 4 days a week, work on getting your work. And it could be that you spend 2 hours of focused time doing calls, emails, updating your resume, interviews, take a 30-minute break, and then go back for another 2 hours and focus on it and send out resumes, make some phone calls. One of the things that I do is I make sure that every week I have 30 conversations with people. Some of them are people who can directly hire me. Some of them are people who are connected to people who can hire me. I don't always go in the front door. Sometimes I come around the back and come in, and that's okay. But whether it's the morning or the afternoon, but don't spend all day just working on that. Because if you do, it's going to drive you crazy. A watched pot never boils. Instead, in the afternoons or in the morning or some other time, I have some recommendations for you to fill up your mind and distract you. And that is volunteer. Find a place to volunteer and get out and do some things for other people. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. Right now, people are making masks. Right now, people are helping to assemble baskets and food. Get out and volunteer. It'll take your mind off of your interviews and get you into something that's good and positive for your life. You might learn a language. You know, this is a great time to learn Spanish or French or other languages. Did you know that if you know a second language, that you are much more likely to be hired than not? So I encourage you to, during this time, start learning conversational Spanish. That's a big deal in Texas. But also German is a big deal. French is a big deal. Asian languages are a big deal. And if you can learn some of those and get conversational, it will open doors for you like you can't imagine. But another thing that you could do is learn to play an instrument, whether it's a guitar or a harmonica or a piano. You know, when you learn to become artistic and practice some of those things, it takes your mind off of that pot that needs to boil and onto some creative things in your life. And when you do that, you'll keep your sanity. So there are other suggestions. You could go get a certification. When this pandemic hit, oh my word. I mean, some of my event planners called and said, "Hey, Scott, man, we think you're a great speaker. We'd love to have you, but nobody can gather. And so I'm sorry, we're going to have to cancel our event." So I took a Zoom class. I took a class on how to do this, how to look into the camera, how to have a good background, how to put on a bright shirt, how to be conversational, how to use these earbuds, how to have a green sheet behind me, all of that stuff. And one of those places called and said, "Hey, Scott, our members are not able to come together. So I'm sorry, we're just going to have to cancel." And I said, "Hold on. Would you be willing to send it to Zoom? Because your members, if they ever needed something, they need it right now." And I am becoming proficient in making Zoom presentations where we can do breakout sessions and I can stand in front of the camera, and whether they're at home or in their cubicle or in a office complex, wherever they are, they can take this Zoom conference and they can have everything it offers. And they said, "Well, let me check with the boss and we'll see." 30 minutes later, they called back and they said, "Yes, we're going to do it." And so for the Chamber of Commerce up in the Waco area, we did their first Zoom chamber meeting and it was a sensation. It went over great. And the members were able to feel connected about what was going on. Right now is a great time for you to learn how to do your work over Zoom. Learn how to communicate over Zoom and have Zoom conversations with people. So my encouragement to you is learn to be innovative. And I close with this. You know, Joseph in the Bible, in Genesis, Joseph was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. And he had a series of very unfortunate events in his life. One of those, his first bad one, was that he was sold by his brothers into slavery in Egypt. They carried him away, and I mean, it was horrible. Went in slavery, a guy by the name of Potiphar bought him, and Joseph went into Potiphar's house, who was a very wealthy man, and just did excellent. He grew where he was planted, and he did really well. But then Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, told a lie on him. He got thrown into prison. And while he was in prison, he did the best that he could there. The talents and the gifts that he had, he put to work. And so he helped to manage the jail, and he was a dreamer. And he would dream dreams, and he could interpret dreams. And he interpreted some dreams for the butcher and the baker. And one of them was exalted back into their place, and the other one had their head cut off. But Joseph was the one that interpreted that. And after a little while, they had forgotten about him, and Pharaoh had a dream. And so Pharaoh said, is there anybody anywhere that knows anything about dreams? And the guy who had been with Joseph said, I know a guy who can interpret dreams. And Joseph was brought up and cleaned up, got him a shave and a haircut and a new set of clothes on, and went in front of the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh said, here's the dream that I've had. There are 11 sheaves that are laying down, and they're full, and then 11 that are empty, and the one ate the other. And finally, Joseph interpreted and said, there's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And you better save during those 7 years of plenty, so you'll be prepared for the 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh said, you're going to be my new project manager of the land of Egypt. So Joseph never dreamed that those skills were going to turn into something phenomenal for him. I close with this. You have more skills than you realize, more gifts to offer the business community. And the business community is looking for you. We've just got to get those gifts out on the surface where they can see them. So make that list of 10 things that you're talented in, that list of 10 things that you can do, and start putting it out there and talking about it. Because necessity is the mother of invention, and it's also the father of innovation. You're not living on the brink of disaster. It's not the end of the world. God isn't against you. You are living on the edge of a miracle. And it's the gifts and the talents that you have. So discover them and get them out there for the world to see. I want to thank you for your time. Man, I love being with you guys. And I pray for you. I wish you the very best. Craig, thank you very much. And I want to hand it back to you.
Thanks, Scott. We did have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
I've got them here, right here. Where did you take your Zoom class at? What kind of Zoom training did you take?
So it was online. It was actually given by somebody from the National Speakers Association.
Okay.
I would be happy to find a resource for you and get it to you. I mean, right now, I could teach you the Zoom class. Yeah. And I wouldn't mind doing something like that for you. It's not that complicated. Right.
Good. They also asked, what thought leaders do you follow with respect to innovation or, change energizing? What thought leaders do you follow?
So there's a lot of great ones out there. I'm a big believer in Napoleon Hill and the book that he wrote, Think and Grow Rich. I was in a mastermind. That book really changed my mindset. I think everybody on this call should go get the book, Think and Grow Rich. This book, it's called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, is a fantastic book. And I highly recommend that you get it as well. The Slight Edge